Across the globe, the ocean is rising. It's not a future threat. It's happening now, flooding coastlines, swallowing homes, redrawing maps, and putting hundreds of millions of lives at risk. But while the seas are rising, so are we. In 2022, coastal cities took a stand. They signed the CITES Declaration, a bold call launched by the Ocean and Climate Platform for shared solutions and climate adaptation. From that first spark, a global movement was born, the Coalition for Ocean Rise and Coastal Resilience. This is a call to unite, to act, learn, and build together. A coalition for resilient coastal cities and regions to sea level rises and ocean changes.
Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, Prime Ministers, Ministers, distinguished guests, good morning, and thank you for joining us today. It's our great honor to welcome all of you to the Ocean Rise and Coastal Resilience Summit, a special event of the United Nations Ocean Conference. Today, here in the heart of Nice, a city with its feet in the sea, but its eyes firmly on the horizon, the future, we are launching a new chapter in global climate resilience, the official unveiling of the Ocean Rise and Coastal Resilience Coalition. Coastal communities from Tuvalu to New Orleans, from Venice to Valparaiso, are not just on the front line of the climate crisis. They are also at the forefront of solutions. And this summit is just about that, coming together, sharing science, sharing stories, sharing tools, and most of all, showing courage to protect what connects all of us across this planet, our oceans and our shores, and importantly, be ready to adapt. A few important notices before we start. The summit aims, of course, to be an inclusive platform for dialogue and progress. Please note, if you haven't already, that translation is available in French, English, Spanish, and Portuguese. Please select the appropriate channel for your preferred language. Please do remain seated during the duration of the event. And please remember to turn off your mobile phones, or maybe put them on silent, and maybe try to switch off a little bit today from daily communications in order to be fully present, to appreciate a historic event, and to connect with each other. Before we begin, let me share a few words about what's ahead. Our program has been carefully curated to reflect the urgency of our collective mission. Please do scan the QR code of the event to find out more. You'll have access to all the information you may need, should you decide to do so. We'll begin this morning with powerful opening remarks from our hosts as we officially launch the coalition. Throughout the day, we'll hear from those on the front line, island nations, indigenous communities, mayors, and local leaders of coastal cities and regions, those whose daily lives are being reshaped by the rising tide. We'll also explore the coalition's core missions and mechanisms, including how we unlock knowledge, funding, and political momentum. And finally, we'll close with strong commitments from national governments and global institutions to carry this work forward beyond today, from the shores of Nice here to coastal communities across the entire world. So thank you again for being here and for being part of this global journey toward resilience. To open our summit, I would like to please invite to the stage Lee Junhua, United Nations Under-Secretary General for Economic and Social Affairs, Secretary General of the Third UN Ocean Conference. Yes, please join me in welcoming him. Franz Taltenbach Capra, Minister of Environment and Energy of Costa Rica, co-host of the Third United Nations Ocean Conference. Peter Thompson, the United Nations Secretary General Special Envoy for the Ocean. And for opening remarks, we welcome the Mayor of Nice since 2008, former French Minister in charge of Industry and Minister of Overseas Territories, President of the Provence-Alpes-Côte d'Azur region, mandated by the French President Emmanuel Macron to chair the Ocean Rise and Coastal Resilience Coalition. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Christian Estrosi. Welcome to all of you.
Well, good morning to everyone. First, welcome everyone. We are here now. This is it. This coalition is at last becoming reality. And I am saying at last because for us, this is the outcome of 2 years of work. So before we really delve into this summit and go in depth, I would like to take the time to thank all of you, all of the men and women who have made this coalition possible. I would first like to thank, naturally, the United Nations and the Secretary General, Lee Junhua, who represents today in his quality of General Secretary, Deputy General Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Secretary General, for your trust in our city. Thank you too, naturally, to Peter Thompson. Thank you, Peter. I know the energy, all the energy that you put for many years for this victory of our work for the ocean. You're the man of the ocean in the United States. Welcome in Nice, and thank you for your help. I want to say that you are an ambassador, an incredible ambassador, and you are the special envoy of the General Secretary of the United States for the Oceans. And I would like to thank the Minister of Environment and Energy of Costa Rica, our friend Stoltenberg, who is representing the nation with whom we have been tasked along France and Costa Rica to organize here in Nice the current summit. And naturally, thank you to the French President, Mr. Emmanuel Macron, who has personally committed for this coalition and made it possible for it to exist. And thanks to his special envoy, Olivier Poivre d'Arvor. Thanks also to Latoya Cantrell, who he is the VP of this coalition. Thank you, Latoya. You are our VP for the coalition. You are the mayor of the fantastic city of New Orleans in the United States, and to have the U.S. With your face and your smile, it is fantastic for us here in Nice. Thank you for being here. I would also like to thank and hail the person who actually does represent those who might be in despair today and who will express today on behalf of all the small islands in the Pacific, in the Indian Ocean, in the Atlantic, and even in some coastal cities of Europe and Mediterranean who are under severe threat. So through Theo, the Prime Minister of Tuvalu, who will speak later, and also to the Ocean and Climate Platform and its president. If this coalition has so much meaning and so much work and substance, it's thanks to your pioneering work for the past 3 years, turning this cooperation between coastal cities a reality. thank you also to the international organizations that make us the UNESCO Oceanographic Commission, the OECD, the European Investment Bank, the Global Network of Local Governments for Sustainable Development, the Bloomberg Philanthropies, C40, Resilient Cities Network, Erythm, and Agency for Sustainable Mediterranean Cities, Local Cities and Governments, International Association of Cities and Ports, the Mercator, the Arctic Monitoring and Forecasting Center, the International Union for Conservation of Nature, and the European Commission, naturally. And for me, this is the opportunity to thank all the mayors, all the members of all my city councillors, the Municipal Council of Nice, of the Community of Communes, the port, the region, and also especially my friend and neighbor, the mayor of Antibes, Jean Leonetti, who was under the presidency of Mr. Nicolas Sarkozy, the Minister of European Affairs, and who is here sharing with us his friendly presence. Thanks above all to the mayors, governors of all the island states, many of whom have came a long way to be here with us. And for some of you, you are coming from nations whose survival is at risk. Your presence here and honor and responsibility for us all. Ladies and gentlemen, the scientific summit that was carried out before this meeting was very instructive, enlightening, and sometimes rough, but necessary. And I thank all the scientists who have drawn the conclusions of the 3 days and who will take part in the roundtables. These 3 days have confirmed what we know already, which is that we don't know enough what the ocean is, but what we know is enough to really make us worry. The ocean is sick because of human actions, and this will have huge consequences and unpredictable consequences. What the scientists are telling us is that, and what we see it firsthand with our own eyes. And as I always say, mayors and the governors of our territories, the presidents, the ministers of our islands, and the mayors of our islands, actually, we are the representatives of the last kilometer in the huge summit and conferences that unites scientists, financials, and heads of states and governments that will meet tomorrow. We see that the storms and tornadoes are more and more frequent and violent. And scientists tell us that this is we see the receding of the shoreline, and the sea is advancing into inland. And we see populations that are almost constrained and pushed to move. Scientists are telling us it's going to get worse and nobody will be spared. And each one of us in this room, we are aware of this. We are only just at the beginning of an era of tremendous overhaul. No city, no port will be spared. We know that. We know because we are sentinels. We stand here every day, sometimes often in happy moments, but also when we have to grieve. We manage life, waters, roads, health. We are tasked to preserve biodiversity. And we have this task of protecting climate one way or another. Well, actually, this is the good news of the day. Now, as of now, dear friends, dear colleagues, we're not alone. With this coalition, we will be able to help each other and be able to have a better presence, bigger presence in national, international negotiations. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a reason this coalition starts now.
Unstable, tension is rising. We can all see the world shifting. Raw power is back on the international stage. We are living in dangerous times, one that makes multilateralism more vital than ever. This coalition was built to protect what we share. Nowadays, I believe not being a state is an advantage. We can focus on what matters most, adapting, surviving. In troubled times like these, that gives us something rare, freedom. Cette liberté, nous avons bien l'intention de l'utiliser.
This freedom is something we intend to use because cities are labs for solutions. They test, they innovate, they adapt. They are standing on the first lines and they're at the vanguard. And that is the reason why the announcement of this coalition was something that was really welcomed. Because you just have to look at the number of delegations that have come today to take part in this. And let alone all of those who could not come but who have joined our coalition. And when I say all of those who were not able to come, I also have this thought for those who were forbidden to come, who could not come because they were stopped from doing so. And some countries who could not come to the United Nations Ocean Conference, those who could not come here are represented here today by each and every one of you. And this, our approach is expressing an expectation on the part of the people, of the elected officials, of the expectation from the United Nations, Mr. General Secretary, major organizations. We need to explore different ways of acting, of cooperating, and our coalition is one of the three special events of the UNOC, with the Scientific and the Finance Forum. So I see from what height we are sharing hope. This coalition is based on three pillars on which we will have the opportunity to go back to: mobilization, knowledge, and financing. And everywhere there are solutions that work, and wherever there is something to share, we will organize that, and we will organize the sharing of information and skills. This coalition will also bridge between scientists and reps of the territories that we are. Accessing knowledge, techniques, data, that is already a very important part of the path, and we will make the data accessible. And without money, we would be completely powerless. So we need to go in that also. Our governance is at the image of this coalition. It is collective, transparent, and action-focused. We have a secretariat, a steering committee for work groups, and we have one goal, a method, and now official existence within the United Nations by being harbored or hosted by the World Center of Mobility, the GCCM. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a common enemy. It is time. We no longer have the luxury of working each in our corners. We are now entering a new era, the era of the Union of Coastal Territories, the era of coastal resistance. We will not be able to salvage everything, but we will not let everything disappear. Welcome, and I welcome each and one of you, every one of you in the coalition.
Many thanks, Monsieur le Maire, Christian Estrosi. Many thanks for hosting all of us in your beautiful city. Next, it's our honor to hear the United Nations Under-Secretary General for Economic and Social Affairs, Secretary General of the Third UN Ocean Conference, Mr. Lee Junhua.
Good morning. Mr. Christian Astori, the mayor of Nice, distinguished mayors of the different cities from the global parts, excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to join you in Nice, where the beauty of land meeting sea inspires our urgent action. My sincere thanks to the city of Nice for convening this important summit and for generous hospitality. On behalf of the United Nations Secretary General, I bring a message of urgency and commitment. The climate crisis is a coastal crisis. Sea level rise is accelerating faster now than in the past 3,000 years. Globally, 900 million people, 1 in 10, live in lower-lying coastal zones. Their lives and livelihoods are increasingly precarious. Communities face the increasing threats of the inundation. Freshwater sources are compromised. Economies that are disrupted. Biodiversity is vanishing at an alarming rate. Without the immediate scaled-up action, nearly $14 trillion in coastal infrastructure is at risk in 2100. The presence of His Excellency, the Prime Minister of Tuvalu, a country facing this very existential threat, and the mayor of the New Orleans, a city scarred by rising waters, powerfully underscores that our shared vulnerability. While the global south disproportionately bear the burden, no coastline is immune. As a Secretary General of the Seasful Conference, and also in my current role as a Secretary General of the Third UN Ocean Conference, the ocean and the threat of the sea level rise are close to my heart. Effective coastal resilience demands meticulous planning, robust financing, and diligent implementation, all grounded in science and local wisdoms. The United Nations remains fully committed to supporting the vulnerable communities to achieve this. The Secretary General's Early Warning for All initiative is progressing, aiming to protect every person on Earth with an alert system by 2027. We also see the inspiring progress in implementing the Antigua and Barbuda Agenda for Seas, a testament to what the focused efforts can achieve. The UN Ocean Conference, opening just 2 days away, will galvanize the global action on the regional cooperation, the critical ocean climate biodiversity interlinkages, and centrally, the coastal resilience. Momentum is also building for the International Conference on Financing for Development, focusing on scaling up finance from all sources, public, private, multilateral, and through the innovative mechanisms for sustainable development. Excellencies, distinguished guests, from Nice to the New Orleans, from Jakarta to Suva, from Shanghai to Elbowsk, coastal cities are in front lines of this rising threat. You are leading the charge, building the sea walls, restoring the mangroves, allocating land, and safeguarding communities. These vital efforts demanded our full support with necessary tools and financing. In this spirit, I commend the Mayor of Nice for his visionary leadership in launching the Ocean Rise and Coastal Resilience Coalition. This coalition is a timely call to strengthen cooperation before the window to act against the irreversible impacts closes. Its 5 pillars: mobilizing leadership, sharing knowledge, unlocking finance, building capacity, and amplifying coastal voices in international governance provide a robust framework for collective action. United Nations proudly supports this initiative and its core values. UNOC 3 must be a turning point where all the actors accelerated efforts towards a sustainable ocean future. Let us meet this rising tide with unwavering courage, unified cooperation, and the profound urgency this moment demands. Thank you.
Many thanks, Mr. Under-Secretary General Junhua.
For the protocol. But on the name of everybody, I want to wish the welcoming of the past Secretary of State of the United States, Mr. John Kerry. Sorry.
Protocol is important, but so is welcoming our very special guests indeed. So many thanks, Mr. Under-Secretary General Junhua. Next, it's our absolute pleasure to hear the United Nations Secretary General Special Envoy for the Ocean, without whom we wouldn't be here today. This simply wouldn't be possible. Ladies and gentlemen, Peter Thompson.
Mayor and Prime Ministers and Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, all courtesies observed, and what a great day for us all to be together. What a privilege indeed to address you all. So look, on behalf of everybody present, I want to thank you, Mayor Estrosi, for your incredible vision, for your leadership, and in particular for the warm welcome that you've given us all to your city. Thank you very much. I want to join with Under-Secretary Lee for commending you, Mr. Mayor, in your launch today of the Ocean Rise and Coastal Resilience Coalition, with hundreds of millions of human lives being placed in acute danger this century by the effects of sea level rise. Surely we must all support the coalition in its bold endeavor, and I, for one, Mr. Mayor, stand ready to serve. Ladies and gentlemen, there are two things one should never take for granted on this planet. The ingenuity of Homo sapiens, that's us, and the power of nature. Our ingenuity took us from the caveman days to the space age in the blink of an eye, in planetary terms. Now, our ingenuity has raised us to the level of warming an entire planet. While that massive geoengineering feat may not have been our original intention, we did it anyway. And now we are facing the consequences. Prominent amongst those consequences is, of course, a steadily warming ocean, which in turn is causing sea levels to rise around the world. As to the power of nature, anyone who's lived unsheltered through the fury of a tropical hurricane can attest to the immensity of nature's wrath. And I count myself amongst that number. And anyone who lives along a coastline who knows will know the interaction between the sea and land is ever in flux. And one can cite hundreds of examples of how such change affects the lives of coastal people. I think back, Minister Tattenbach, to the inspiring Immersed in Change conference you hosted in Costa Rica last year. We saw clear evidence then of the immense changes that are underway in the ocean and the need for us to understand the science of what is happening and how we should be adapting to the realities of what lies ahead. The positive spirit of that Costa Rican conference has guided much of our thought on the road to Nice. Ladies and gentlemen, you may have seen the briefing note prepared by the International Science Council for the UN General Assembly's plenary meeting on sea level rise that took place back in November 2023 in New York, One of the key messages of that brief was that sea level rise is accelerating and will continue to rise for centuries under all emissions scenarios. This is very sobering advice, but we can temper it by understanding that what we do today to mitigate global warming will shape the future of sea level rise. Continue our current path towards 3 degrees global warming, and the inundation of land by sea will be extreme. Keep to the Paris Climate Agreement's 1.5 degrees target, and human ingenuity should be capable of managing the consequences. It seems to me that our generation would be suffering from a deep moral malaise, a monstrous one at that, if we were to turn a blind eye to the problems we're creating for future generations. Need I say it? To find the necessary respect for the principle of intergenerational justice, one may look no further than the love that you have for your children and grandchildren. So, ladies and gentlemen, I close with 3 pieces of advice as to where we should be heading at global, regional, national, and local levels. Firstly, we've got to strengthen cooperation to address sea level rise as a shared and urgent priority. Sea level rise demands collective action and mutual support, so we need to be working together now to prepare and adapt. And so if you haven't arranged to join the coalition yet, get on board. Secondly, above all, sea level rise is a local issue. Therefore, we must support the leadership of subnational governments in an inclusive multilateralism of coastal cities, coastal regions, and communities. Again, that's what the coalition is all about. And thirdly, we should be harnessing existing solutions while we go through the process of preparing for transformative adaptation strategies. And there's no shortage of innovative solutions for coastal resilience, but time is of an essence. With the launch of the Ocean Rise and Coastal Resilience Coalition, we have the thrust to elevate these 3 elements in our work. We have the well-being of 1 billion coastal people to consider, so let us delay no further in devising and implementing the rational adaptation plans that we need for coastal resilience. Henceforth, between coastal cities and regions, between scientific institutions and financial actors, may we have seamless cooperation in the cause of overcoming the challenges of sea level rise. The launch of the coalition will make that so. So, ladies and gentlemen, in the years to come, may we look back on this day in Nice as really the moment that we saw humanity's innovative global response to sea level rise really getting underway. And before I sit down, I'm going to present the Nature's baton to the mayor. The Nature's baton for years now has been traveling from conference to conference, the climate COPs, the environment COPs. And here we are today. I'm presenting it to Mayor Estrosi with a letter inside that has been carried here by a yacht coming across the Mediterranean, encouraging you and thanking you for all the work that you're doing. Thank you.
Peter Thompson, thank you very much. And most of all, thank you for your determination, indeed. And now we are honored to hear a leading voice from a country that has long punched way above its weight in environmental diplomacy. That's Costa Rica, co-host of the 3rd United Nations Ocean Conference alongside France. Costa Rica has become a global beacon for nature-based solutions and marine conservation. So, please join me in welcoming Franz Tattenbach Capra, Minister of Environment and Energy of Costa Rica.
Mayor of Nice, Christian Estrosi, Under-Secretary General of the United Nations Economic and Social Affairs, Li Yuhua, Ocean Special Envoy of the UN, Secretary General Peter Thompson, Prime Ministers, Ministers, Mayors, Former Secretary and always champion of environmental action, John Kerry, honorable guests, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor to stand before you for the President of Costa Rica, Rodrigo Chavez, who has been personally involved in making the conservation and sustainable use of our ocean a countrywide all users, especially those in the coastal cities and regions involved in its health. It is an honor to be here on behalf of Costa Rica and launch this vital initiative, bringing together coastal cities and regions committed to confronting one of the most pressing challenges of our time, the rising seas and the climate change. As Minister of Environment and Energy in Costa Rica, a country with 1,200 kilometers of coastline and an increasing deep-rooted economic activity connection to the ocean, I speak not only from the place of policy, but from the place of lived experiences. Our communities, our biodiversity, and our economy are all intricately tied to the health of our coast and our ocean. Costa Rica has long been pioneering environmental stewardship. We have made bold commitments to decarbonization, to protect over 25% of our land territory and 30% of our marine territory, and invested in nature-based solutions. But we know that no nation can face climate crisis alone or the health of the ocean alone. In its coastal town of Punta Arenas, for example, we are already witnessing the impacts of sea level rise, flooded streets, saltwater intrusion, and displacement of family. Yet, we're also seeing resilience. Local leaders are working with scientists and civil society to implement early warning systems, restore mangroves, and redesign infrastructure to withstand future risks. In the Caribbean, province of Limon, Afro-American and indigenous communities are leading efforts to preserve traditional knowledge and adapt to their livelihoods to changing marine ecosystems. These are not just stories of vulnerability. They are stories of innovation, courage, and hope. This initiative represents the turning point. It is a call to action for cities and regions to share knowledge, mobilize resources, and build global alliance for coastal resilience. Let us learn from each other, support one another, and ensure that our coastal zones are not left behind, but are instead at the forefront of climate solutions. Costa Rica stands ready to collaborate, to lead, and to listen. Together we can turn the tide. Thank you very much.
And many thanks, of course, to all our speakers today for setting the tone for our conversations, our crucial discussions today. And once more, ladies and gentlemen, please join me for a final round of applause to thank all our speakers, all our hosts today for their inspiring words. Many, many thanks. Many thanks to all of you. And now we turn from global strategy to local experience. Because before we talk about solutions, we must listen. Listen to those living with the consequences of the climate crisis. The next segment is titled Voices from Rising Shores, and it brings together frontline leaders from small island states, indigenous communities, and coastal cities. They are not only adapting to rising seas, they are reshaping our understanding of what resilience looks like in action. So please join me in welcoming our three panelists to the stage. Felitti Teo, Prime Minister of Tuvalu, Adriano Perez, General Chief of the Gunayala Comarca in Panama, and Latoya Cantrell, Mayor of New Orleans, Louisiana, USA. Please come and join us here on stage. And a warm round of applause, please. A very warm welcome to all of you. Thank you for being with us today. So let's begin our conversation with Prime Minister Teo of Tuvalu. Prime Minister, your country is at the receiving end of climate change and the climate crisis and the ensuing rising water levels. And yet, Tuvalu has become a guiding and powerful voice internationally for small island developing states. So how are you navigating this moment? And what's your message to the international community here about what's at stake? Please.
Thank you, Madam MC. Excellencies, our very gracious host, the Mayor of Nice, Honorable Christian Estosis, distinguished participant, ladies and gentlemen. With all protocols duly observed, I express my profound gratitude and appreciation to you, Mayor Estosi, for your very kind invitation to me to participate in this event. Thank you also for the honor of adding my voice to the voices of the rising shores in this opening segment. I speak not only on behalf of my country, Tuvalu, which is at the front line of the frontline countries most vulnerable to the devastating impact of climate change-induced sea level rise, but also as a representatives of the 1 billion people living in low-lying countries and territories whose livelihood is directly threatened by sea level rise. For Tuvalu, the ocean that has sustained our livelihood for generations and defined us as a people and as a community with distinctive cultures and heritage, now threatens to engulf and challenge our very future existence. If the current rate of climate change and sea level rise is not arrested and reversed. Sea level rise, therefore, poses the greatest existential threat to Tuvalu economy, to Tuvalu's culture and heritage, and to the future viability of the very land that has nourished and sustained Tuvalu's ancestors for centuries. Tuvalu is a low-lying atoll nation, one of 4 in the world, with a 26 square kilometers of land territory, with its highest point of barely 3 meters above sea level. For Tuvalu, the current predictions on the rate of rising seas are frighteningly disturbing. It is predicted that in only 25 years, by 2050, more than 50% of Tuvalu's land territory will be regularly flooded by irregular tidal surges. 50 years afterward, in 2100, more than 90% of Tuvalu's land territory will suffer the same fate, thus seriously compromising the integrity of our land territory. The predictions, however, do not account for severe climate conditions like cyclones and hurricanes, which will exponentially accelerate the timelines that those thresholds will be reached. Very unfortunately, and most unfairly, The existential threat posed by climate change-induced sea level rise is not of Tuvalu's making, as Tuvalu contribute negligibly to the causes of climate change. But sea level rise will remake and redefine us as a country and a people. Sea level rise is a global and multidimensional phenomenon that requires collective global actions and a prompt and immediate response. No nation, no city, and no community are immune to the impact of climate change, nor should a nation, a city, or a community be required to address the devastating impact of sea level rise on its own. So I congratulate the Mayor of Nice and other partner coastal cities and stakeholders for the unity of purpose in launching this important coalition. And I thank the initiators of this coalition for permitting small island developing states like my country, Tuvalu, to be part of this noble and innovative objective. I welcome and support the Ocean Rise and Coastal Resilience Coalition, which establishes an important platform for collaborations between coastal cities, local government, and stakeholders to drive transformative local climate actions through the fortification and consolidation of their communities' resilience and adaptability to the impact of sea level rise. In support of the coalition, I would advocate for the coalition to promote these objectives. Firstly, the mobilizations of leaders and practitioners to share solutions and innovations with a focus on nature-based and hybrid approaches that protect people, ecosystem, and infrastructure. Secondly, integrating scientific, traditional, and local knowledge to guide risk-informed decision-making and tailored adaptation strategy. Thirdly, empowering local actors through technical assistance, partnership, and peer learning to deliver community-led solutions. Fourthly, facilitating access to public and private finance, unlocking capital for infrastructure resilience and community-driven initiatives. And fifthly, elevating the voices and needs of coastal cities in global and national arenas, ensuring their perspectives shape climate and ocean governance. I would also urge the Ocean Rise and Coastal Resilience Coalition to complement the work of the international community in pursuing to influence international law and state practices concerning the legal implication of sea level rise on statehood, maritime boundaries, and human rights. As I spoke at the opening of the UNGA dedicated high-level meeting on sea level rise in September last year, the proposed UN Declaration on Sea Level Rise must encapsulate the following 6 key principles and objectives. Firstly, the principle of statehood continuity as a tenet of international law and international cooperation, and that statehood cannot be challenged under any circumstances of sea level rise. Secondly, it's the principle of the permanency of national maritime boundaries as established and notified to the Secretary General of the United Nations in accordance with the Law of the Sea, a Convention on the Law of the Sea. Thirdly, to call on the international community and regional institutions to enable climate mobility pathways that facilitate movement safely, orderly, and with dignity. Fourthly, to devise concrete programs for the international community to support efforts to safeguard our unique culture and heritage, both tangible and intangible. Fifthly, to establish a dedicated and innovative financing mechanism to support the positive adaptation journeys of the most vulnerable community. as current climate finance remains fragmented and insufficient to meet the escalating needs of vulnerable communities. And fifthly, to underscore the importance of knowledge, data, and science to anticipate and plan for the impact of sea level rise, and to establish a dedicated platform to share best practices, innovative solutions, and necessary data and analysis to support informed risk disaster management decision in affected countries and community. I hope, and it is my strong counsel, that the coalition would also advocate and promote those principles as standards of international law. Addressing sea level rise will merely be an aspiration without new partnership that can ensure higher collaborations, common purpose, and collective efforts. The Ocean Rise and Coastal Resilience Coalition establishes such a new partnership, and one that I hope will be more strategic and more effective without the heavy bureaucracy and red tapes associated with intergovernmental mechanisms. Finding the right solution will require statesmanship and empathy, beginning with an acknowledgement that a situation globally caused must have a globally just and equitable solution. Ladies and gentlemen, I trust the mission of the new coalition aligns very well with that noble objective. Mayor of Nice, in conclusion, I will, if the offer remains open, I will gratefully accept your offer for me to serve as the Vice President of the new coalition, a responsibility that I accept with the utmost humility and will carry it with all seriousness and dignity. And I seek everyone's support and cooperation. I wish every success in your deliberation for the rest of the event today. And I thank you. And in Tuvalu, we say, Faftailasi, Tuvalu, Motetua. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister Teo, for reminding us first that we are facing an existential threat here, and second, that community empowerment is at the heart of solutions. Yes, it is an existential threat, and sadly, we have a case study here of what the climate crisis can lead to with Panama, where the Gunayala indigenous community is undergoing something unprecedented. It is the world's first climate-driven relocation. So General Chief Adriano Perez, could you please take to the lectern and tell us how your people are navigating a forced transition with much dignity, but also with enormous cultural and social cost. And maybe could you share what this process has meant for your community and what justice looks like in this context, please?
Buenos días, señor Cristian Estrosi, de NISA.
I'd like to welcome and thank Mr. Estrosi and the minister from Costa Rica. I would like to welcome the delegates from indigenous people, and especially the ones coming from coastal and regions and islands that participate in this brotherly encounter. I'm Adriano Perez. My mother language Inakuna, that represents the coast and the rain. I represent the Kuna people in Panama. It's a native nation in the Caribbean. I come from an island that resists and organizes and demands at the same time justice. And I'm talking on behalf of these islands, of these communities, on behalf of our ancestors who know the sea, and our brothers, our young people who are fighting for their future. For us, the sea is not a resource, it's a territory, it's culture, and it has a spiritual dimension. Our life is built around the sea, with the sea, but today the sea is changing. The waters are rising, the reefs are dying, and we hear talks of oil platforms, of underwater mining. And we have to say here firmly that the ocean cannot be negotiated, it has to be protected. Our community is an island and has been inhabited by our people of generations and generations, but the ocean rise, as well as the climate change, make life on the island more and more difficult. After years of difficulties, of suffering, of dialogue, we took the collective decision to relocate on the mainland. And this is how our new location was built in order to live in dignity. It was not a technical relocation, it was a cultural process. Even if we were not able to replicate the same rhythm of life and the same type of dwellings online, we transferred our language, our identity, our organization, and the soul of our ancestors. This is the first relocation because of the ocean rise on the American continent. It is a symbol of adaptation in the face of climate change. It is the proof that the indigenous people not only resist, but also make proposals and act. Our ancestors knew how to live with the ocean. We have sustainable fishing techniques. We respect the lunar cycles, the moon cycles. In my territories, there's no industrial fishery. Our knowledge exists, even if it is not recognized as such very often. We've seen, in front of all these inequalities and inefficient solutions, the world needs our knowledge, our tools, and we are part of one of the most wealthy environment in terms of biodiversity, in terms of number of species, but because of coral reef blanching, ocean rise, and climate change, our life is threatened. We live with this threat every day, and we're marginalized by the global community. We demand a transparent access to all global financing. We know that financing means responsibility, and as an organized people, we're ready to give accounts in transparency of our action, but we have to lift all the barriers, all the obstacles that we face. This is why we do appreciate this coalition, because it recognizes that the real solutions will come from the territories themselves and not from offices. So from our community, we have a collective decision-making process, and we take decisions on the basis of our knowledge, in active knowledge of the ocean, in a sustainable way in front of the industrial fisheries. And this is true at all levels. we do not talk only for our community, we talk on behalf of all the indigenous coastal people that are on the front line in face of climate change. And we launch this appeal for concrete solutions, concrete and collective solutions in equity. We need an alliance between indigenous people, local authorities, and international bodies. We're not asking for charity. We're asking for respect and dignity. We're ready to share this challenge. Anaya kulaya, we say in our language. Our great grandmother is calling, and we have to act finally. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Jefe Pérez.
Thank you.
Address, what a powerful reminder that climate adaptation must include the protection of heritage and identity, and how, once again, communities must be empowered to be at the forefront of change. We are moving further north now, I guess, to the United States, with Mayor LaToya Cantrell, the mayor of New Orleans, which has become a global symbol of climate vulnerability. We all, of course, remember the devastating impact of Hurricane Katrina on your city, Mayor, but also your tale of resilience and reinvention. In your leadership, you've championed equitable adaptation and green infrastructure. So my question to you is, how do you lead a city that remembers catastrophe but refuses to be defined by it?
Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, good morning. I know that proper protocol has been established, but I must give a big thank you to my brother, Mayor Strozzi. Thank you so much for your leadership, for your hospitality, to all of our prime ministers, our chiefs, of course, the Honorable John Kerry, all of my brother and sister mayors who are present, all of our guests. Thank you so much for this opportunity to share with you and to really be in solidarity with you, not only on this issue, but as we know that it is about people-to-people relations. That's why we're here, and we are the collective power of now, because the time is now. For the city of New Orleans, and as was mentioned, yes, 20 years this year, we faced Hurricane Katrina that changed my city forever. It was not just a storm, it was a disaster. It was exacerbated by decades of disinvestment, environmental degradation, social inequities, you name it. We lost over 1,800 of our people, and out of that 18, many went unknown, meaning not able to identify them, but they matter even in death and today. Entire neighborhoods were destroyed. My neighborhood, for example, of Broadmoor, which is a microcosm of the city of New Orleans demographically and socio-economically, was underwater 3 weeks, but 80% of the city mirrored that underwater. Families were displaced. We found comfort in other states and cities around the United States, but we also saw the love from our global community coming in, volunteering time, sending resources, letting us know that we're not alone. And thank you so much for that. The trauma of Hurricane Katrina still is with us on today. However, the power of the city of New Orleans and the resilience of her people remain strong every day. When you lead a city like New Orleans, you don't have time as it relates to wait. We have to act. We don't have the luxury to deny climate change or the science that upholds it. And as a mayor, you're on the front line, front and center, and you have to answer to your people every single day. So, in these shoes, always boots on the ground. The effects of climate change is seen daily in my city. From heat, extreme heat, heavy rainfall causing flooding, even snow that lasted, tornadoes, high river, salt intrusion, wind, literally it goes on and on. We have experienced it, and I have experienced it as mayor of the city of New Orleans that I've been serving for 7 years. That is why we are not only involved everywhere, but making sure that we're tied to coalitions to raise our voices and to demonstrate in a very tangible way that in the United States of America, mayors are on that front line, and regardless of any levels of uncertainty, we have to rise to the occasion, and we have to continue to lead our people, lead our communities, lead our cities, lead our neighborhoods. So for there is only one earth and only one ocean. I like to say that there is no planet B. So because when we act alone, and you know, we can only go fast, but when we unite with our collective powers and expertise, together we can go far. And I say once again, thank you so much for this opportunity to share and to speak. Recovery in New Orleans after Katrina didn't come from the top. It came from the bottom up. And that means residents, your neighborhoods, again, boots on the ground. And at that time, the only thing that I was elected to was my neighborhood organization. And it was our neighborhood that led the city in recovery at the grassroots level, and government showed up. But when government showed up, the people were already fired up. But government showed with money, because it takes money. And as a result of that, New Orleans has invested in the federal government. Now, this is federal, this is state, and this is also local. But the federal government invested over $14 billion, nearly $15 billion to rebuild our levee system. And that system, we call it, is a hazard reduction, risk reduction system. So it doesn't save us 100%, but it does protect us. We saw this front and center during 2021 when Hurricane Ida came our way. And it was really the first time, I would say, since Hurricane Katrina, where this infrastructure was tested. And guess what? It did not fail. So building upon those investments, the city, again, collective leveraging the revenues and resources, continue to invest heavily, over $4 billion, again collectively, on gray infrastructure, resurfacing roads and drainage and streets and bridges, redefining even drainage pipes that had not been replaced in over 120 years, investing in green and blue infrastructure, meaning creating systems to hold millions of gallons of water, freeing up this water from going immediately into our drains, utilizing canals, bioswales, rain gardens, and the like. Power transition is also that for us. Where America used to be, and really coming through Louisiana, we were the gas station for America. But right now, we're on the front lines of transitioning with energy storage and renewable energy platforms. Again, the city of New Orleans is leading in this space in the United States. Solar, grid replacement, housing, not only affordability, but elevation, energy efficient, making sure, again, that we're meeting our people where they are with the resources that we know that they need to live a quality life. A communication system. When Hurricane Katrina hit, we had no way of communicating, talking to one another. First responders and the like. But today, that is forever changed. Our community, our city, our residents depend on a communication system that we call NOLA Ready, but in real time, alerting our people. And the people have said that this is their #1 trusted tool or resource to receive information and therefore respond to what is told. Facilities in our city, public facilities, have been outfitted to make sure that when disaster comes, because it's not a matter of if, it's when, but when it does, our recreation centers, our libraries, our churches even in our city, we light them up. We call them lighthouses, putting in millions so that, again, when it comes, our residents have a source that they can go to share information, to get information, to really be whole in those moments. We even have a program I just wanted to share with you. You know, we do second lines in the city of New Orleans, but we have a program called Feed the Second Line. And this is where our restaurants, you know, our culinary artists, where in the middle of a disaster, these restaurants that would lose electricity, then lose food, but instead of losing the food, they cook the food and we feed our people in the city of New Orleans, but being intentional every step of the way. But cities like New Orleans, Nice, Tuvalu, Ghana, know the power and the threat of water. From hurricanes to coastal erosion, we've witnessed. We're losing a football field of water every day on the coast of southeast Louisiana. We are closest to the ground and also to the water. We cannot wait on distant promises when we are already living with rising tide. We know the strength and the power of collaboration, and that local governments, again, are on the front lines of climate adaptation and real resilience. So what I want to say to you before I close, I know the elephant in the room, I would say, is the uncertainty that we feel coming from the United States of America. But what I will say by my presence, and even that of our Honorable John Kerry, that the United States, our people, in every neighborhood and every corner, we stand in solidarity, because it is only through that we will truly witness the power of now. Because again, we understand the time is now. But it's going to be through the people-to-people relations. And that's why I'm here. To speak to you, but to touch your heart, to say that I know that we're not alone. You've demonstrated that. But I say also that the people of the United States can really, really feel the voices coming from you, the global society. We need those voices now more than ever, because it is within that we need to also feel the courage that lives within, but we need to rock it and we need to shake it a little bit more, because the world is at stake. And as Peter Thompson told me last night with the UN, and it stuck with me, and this is my commitment to you. You know, the impact that NOAA has had on science, particularly our ocean, and real-time data that we have been able to collect, but not only to collect, but to take action on. It has really fueled the changes of resilience throughout the world, throughout the globe. So we're needing you now more than ever to eat that elephant with us one bite at a time, because we can no longer wait. And we have to ensure that the United States of America hears the collective voices of the globe, because again, it plays a mighty role. So I don't stand alone. I stand in solidarity with you all. And I just say thank you so much for this opportunity. But I tell you, the power is now, the time is now. But as I look at all of you, I do see that power. So let's take action together. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mayor Cantrell. Before you go, I wanted to thank you doubly for perhaps mentioning, for the very first time since the start of this event, an important word, a word that is also a value, and maybe a key ingredient to accelerate change is love. Love for the planet and love for its people. So thank you very much for that. We are going to pursue our conversations here today and switch them from why we act and why we need to act now to how we act. We welcome next Lorelei Picoult, Executive Director of the Ocean and Climate Platform. Please come here on stage to join us. And thank you. Thanks to all our speakers, of course. Many thanks to all of you. Was entrusted by the governments of France and Costa Rica to co-design the coalition alongside the city of Nice. So Lorelei, could you tell us about the origins of the mandate and how it builds on your work through the Sea Ties or Cities project?
Well, thank you very much. Excellencies, distinguished guests, old friends, first of all, let me start by saying that this is an especially moving moment for me, for the Ocean and Climate Platform, because as Mayor Christian Estrosi said, we have been working very hard for the last 2 years to bring every single one of you here. So this is a very moving moment. Gives me a little bit of goosebumps to see all of you here. Finally, we are here. And I want to tell you a little bit more. After hearing those wonderful testimonies from the front line, really, one thing is painfully clear. Sea level rise is not a distant threat. It's already transforming our lives, our cities, and our coastlines. And for us at the Ocean and Climate Platform, the first real warning was in 2019 with the IPCC report on the ocean and the cryosphere. It was the first time that sea level rise was not just a mention, not just a footnote. There was an entire chapter dedicated to it. And that's when we realized that not only sea level rise is here, it is irreversible. And it will continue for centuries, even millennia. And that's when everything changed for us. We began to wonder, with 50 or 100 centimeter more water, what will happen to the coastlines that we love, to the homes, the histories, the cultures that define them? And that's when the Ocean Climate Platform launched the CTs or Sea Ties. We do like the little puns at the OCP. We launched that initiative, not to raise yet again another alarm, but very much to better understand, to better respond. And we began asking, how are coastal cities and coastal regions already being affected? And most importantly, what is working? What is not working? Do solutions exist? What knowledge, what capacity can be shared? And thanks to our early and continued financial support, whom I'd like to acknowledge here, the French Agency for Development, the Fondation de France, the government of Monaco, the Prince Albert II of Monaco Foundation, and the Fondation Veolia. From the very beginning, they supported us, and we were able to make this work possible. And the picture that emerged was striking. Almost every coastal city on Earth is at risk. And while, as we have heard, some have begun to recognize the threats and take important steps forwards, many are still not prepared. So that's when our mission became really, really clear. If we are to support coastal communities in preparing for the future, we need to act on 4 fronts. The first one, we need to build a shared long-term adaptation vision, one that is grounded in science, but that is tailored to each places. There is no one-size-fits-all when it comes to solutions. And we need to consider that full range of solutions: protection, accommodation, and yes, even retreats. Second, we need to face the financial reality head on. Adaptation will cost far more than we're currently prepared for. So we have been engaging with these financial sectors, with these private entities, to identify what exists in terms of mechanism, to raise awareness, but make the business case that investing in coastal resilience is not only urgent, it's the smart thing to do. One thing that we have heard as well in terms of addressing the risk of deepening existing inequalities in income, mobility, employment, or even health. When adaptation policies fail to address equity, the risk of maladaptation becomes greater. One example is climate gentrification, where resilience becomes a privilege, and that is not acceptable. And finally, we needed to become that echo chambers. And I heard of course, our colleague, distinguished colleague from Tuvalu, and the small island developing states, the big ocean states, and as we love acronym in the UN, that means BOSS. They have been leading the charge within the international negotiations. And us, with the coalition, with the work that we have been doing, we need to amplify, be the echo chambers of the voices of the front line into international negotiations. So in a nutshell, that has been the Cities Initiative, our work, 5 years of our life, 230 stakeholders, 6 regions of the world, countless reports and countless workshops. And we're so delighted to be here, so that has laid the foundation for this Ocean Rise and Coastal Resilience Coalition.
I promised our audience we were going to dive into the how, so let's do it now with greater detail. Could you very briefly take us through the key priorities of the coalition and what you aim to address?
Absolutely. I feel like I'm being grilled. I'm on the spot. I need to tell you how this is going to work. And that's very much why we're here. No more blah, 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 as we have heard in other forums. So the way that we are working together with, obviously, the City of Nice, the Global Center for Climate Mobility, but also a number of fundamental partners, and in the interest of time, I will not cite them all, but just want to say that this global coalition is not just a declaration of intent, it's a plan of action, and it has been co-designed with a wide networks of partners, from networks of subnational governments to international and regional organizations, as well as other partners, private and non-state actors. We have a roadmap on 5 pillars. Mobilization, it starts today, bringing everyone here, having the opportunity to share with elected officials our knowledge of sustainable adaptation solutions. How do we bring this on into the future? The second one is science and local knowledge, equipping local action with best existing data, scientific services, and community insights to guide strategies, making sure that all decision-making across all rooms are rooted in science and knowledge. Of course, capacity building, offering tools, training, and partnerships to empower local leadership and grassroots action. Financing, developing public and private funding mechanisms tailored to the specific needs of coastal communities. And finally, again, advocacy, elevating those voices into all international arenas. And I'm very pleased to say that this is the very first time at this UN Ocean Conference that we have such a convening of local stakeholders, of local governments for coastal territories. And we need to bring this to not only the climate fora with the UNFCCC and COP30 in a few months, but also continue the discussions within the Convention of Biological Diversity. Just to echo what we've heard from our guest earlier this morning, we believe in the power of solidarity, in the exchange of knowledge, in the momentum that one city's progress can inspire in another. And above all, we believe that a resilient coast is not just about surviving the rising tides, it's about designing a future that is livable, inclusive, and dignified for all of us. So let's keep building this coalition together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lorelei Picourt. Thank you. Thank you so much. Another important word here, dignity, of course. And now, to help us close our opening session with another global call to action, we are extremely honored to welcome a lifelong advocate for climate diplomacy and a leader who has truly helped shape the international agenda on ocean and climate action. 10 years ago, he was the leader who signed the Paris Agreement on behalf of the United States. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the former US Secretary of State and Special Presidential Envoy for Climate, John Kerry.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the introduction. Thank you also to you, Mr. Mayor, who you've already been thanked, but I really want to say what a special thing it is, the way you have opened up the city and made such a terrific set of facilities available for this conference. Thank you for that. And to all the other significant players who've had a chance to speak, especially Lorelei, thank you for laying out the agenda. And Lee Fumois, thank you so much. Look forward to working with you as I did formerly with Xie Zhenhua. Peter Thompson's not here yet to go give another speech, but I want to thank him for his cooperation with the Our Ocean conferences and the UN every 4 years, and we kind of dovetail. But I think it's been a great way of being able to put greater focus on the issue. And so I hope you will accept, ladies and gentlemen, for the rest, we will say that diplomatic phrase, all courtesies observed. I want you to know that in Dubai, at the Dubai COP, and I'm going to say a few words about it and its relevance to resilience and to the issue of adaptation and what we have to do for our coastal zones and what we have to do to make all these things happen. But in Dubai, at my 80th birthday, I turned 80, folks, and I'm very busy. I'm very, no, it makes me feel like I'm about to go the other side. Don't do that. I want you to know that I'm equally busy as I travel around the world talking to people about this challenge. I am trying to also persuade them that 80 is the new 55. So I hope people will go along with that. Moreover, I want to emphasize to all of you that I can do all of the things I used to do when I was 55. I just don't remember what they are. I also call attention to the fact that I came here and sat down, and here I am trying to get away from that. And it says John Kerry, ancien secrétaire. And if you interpret, I know it's meant to mean former, but it just says old Secretary Kerry. So anyway, with all of that as a quick introduction, let me just share with you my deep felt thoughts about where we are and where we have to go. We are gathering, yesterday was the 81st anniversary, ironically, 81st anniversary of D-Day in Normandy. And we are gathering in the shadows in France, where remarkable history was made by young people who were willing to step out of a Higgins boat facing these amazing armaments in front of them, knowing that in a matter of seconds, they might be killed or would be killed, and so many were. Some even witnessed boats blowing up beside them as they went in towards the beach, and everybody they knew on that boat was instantaneously gone. Gone because they were willing to fight for truth, and gone because they were willing to fight for values, and they were willing to fight for the future. There is no more fitting time, in my judgment, as we think about what's happening on this great planet of ours, no more fitting time to remember and be inspired by that greatest generation, but also to really think about and measure ourselves, each and every one of us, the full measure of what it is we think we ought to be prepared to do in order to win this battle, which speaker after speaker suggested. It's not just another battle. It's not just a political moment. It's not just a conference. It's a moment where we have come together to try to decide on what we can do to empower ourselves as much as possible to win the fight of the future for our children, for their children, and for those who are voiceless, and in many cases who suffer the greatest impact of what is happening on this planet. I am still in awe of those people who defined that generation. And my mind comes back to a book that I read, written by a professor at Yale University, Professor Paul Kennedy. The book is called Engineers of Victory: The Problem Solvers Who Turned the Tide in the Second World War. Think about that. He didn't talk about General Eisenhower or General de Gaulle or other. He talked about the mid-level people who were given a mission and empowered to accomplish that mission, and they did. That's what really turned the winter of 1943, when nobody knew who might really win the war for certain, when they got control of the skies and got control of the seas and learned how to break the barriers of the shores of Europe that had been fortified by Hitler. So I'm not going far afield, I promise you here, but I do want you to share with me the reality of what that moment should mean to us now, because we have learned that grassroots levels are where you can really make things happen. I fought in a war, a terrible war, Vietnam. I opposed it when I came home, led Veterans Against the War to say we have to change our policy, and we did. We also joined together in a peace movement and an environment movement, a women's movement. And all together, we made things happen, not solving the problem entirely, but making a difference to the lives of many people. That's what a generation did when the world was threatened. And today, we're all threatened. We're threatened everywhere. Everywhere you turn, whether it's a mudslide or a fire or a tornado, which has greater energy, for the simple reason that 90% of the heating of the planet goes into the ocean. And the ocean is now measuring in certain places 101 degrees Fahrenheit. And it's having a profound impact on habitat, spawning grounds, on the fisheries on which billions of people depend for their protein, which is being destroyed by bottom dragging and dumping of refuse. And in places in our country, we have more than 500 of places where there are dead zones. Nothing will live in that area of the ocean. Not because the fish did it, we did it. And we're continuing to do it every single day. So I would underscore that the demands of subnational leadership and direct action on adaptation and resilience is going to be driven by those on the front lines of our coastal communities and our regions. And we know what can happen when people come together to do that. When President Trump came in for the first term, he pulled out of Paris. The next day or two later, I stood up with Governor Cuomo of New York and Governor Newsom of California and others, and we said, we're going to continue to stay in. We're going to continue to do what we know we need to do. And so governors and mayors in 37 of our 50 states, governors at the subnational level, took the lead to implement their renewable portfolio laws. And likewise, mayors, more than 1,000 mayors, Mayor Cantrell, 1,000 mayors came together, the mayor of every major city in the United States, and they said, we're going to do the things that we can do. And they did building codes, transportation networks, recycling, and other things which make a difference. So that's what can happen. And in the end, Donald Trump pulled out of the Paris Agreement, but the American people stayed in. And that's what's going to happen now. When he left office, the first round, 75% of the new electricity in the United States of America came from renewables. And it's 90% now. And I'll tell you something, the marketplace, the people who invest and go out, create the jobs, et cetera, they're not going to back down. all around the world, people are going to continue to do because the marketplace demand is greater than it's ever been for this kind of activity. In fact, last year, $2 trillion was put aside, was invested in new technologies, in the bringing to scale of certain possibilities, solar, wind, and others, and it's changing the world. And I'm going to get to that in a moment, but I want to just define, if I can, why it's so critical we all make Nice a different kind of departure, and I'm serious about that. When we faced the adversity of what had happened with this new president a number of years ago, we built a coalition of American states, of cities, tribal nations, businesses, schools, faith-based institutions, spanning nearly 2/3 of the US population, and we sent a message about where we thought it was important for all of us to make the greatest difference. The C40 mayors united to share their knowledge about local things you can do and about resilience. And now it is vital that we put coastal regions and territories at the heart of this conversation, because they are on the front line of the crisis, as are other challenged communities in various other parts of the world. 48 sub-Saharan African states equal 0.55% of all of the emissions on the planet. About 23 countries, mine included, equal over 80%. Do we need a new rocket scientist or a new algorithm or a new computer in order to understand where the problem really lies? I don't think so. I think all of you know that we've traveled a difficult road where island states are helpful and responsible in changing that road. I remember when we were in Paris, and suddenly out of the blue came this 1.5 degrees discussion. And it was the island states and Tony DeBruym and Marshall Islands and others who led the charge to raise the ambition so that we managed to get it in, at least parenthetically, to the discussion where we said aspiration to achieve 1.5. But in 2018, the IPCC and all of us at the COPs changed that. And we all agreed it has to be 1.5, not as an aspiration, as a reality, and have to stay with that. So, we are now in a situation where we have sea level rise that we've talked about earlier, and that's part of this particular morning's discussion. Well, guess what? Sea level rise is happening because we burn fossil fuels and don't capture the emissions, and we're continuing to do it. The bleaching of coral reefs, it happens because we burn fossil fuel and don't capture the emissions. The warming of the ocean, warmer than we've ever measured it. It happens because 90% of the heat from global warming, which comes from the massive burning of fossil fuel without capturing the emissions, principally. And glaciers that are now melting 4 times faster than they were previously, representing an even greater danger in terms of sea level rise, but also representing a different danger with respect to ocean currents and respect to temperatures on the planet. We have humidity higher than ever before, so we have a challenge that's grown at us that very few people have talked about. It's called the wet bulb global temperature, that when the humidity really gets at a certain level, human beings have a heat stress reaction, and we will lose more people than we have previously, and that is coming at us right now because of the rising humidity levels. So the ocean warms, humidity goes up into the air, travels around in the atmosphere, and falls in these massive rainstorms, massive floods, destroying habitat, taking lives, destroying crops, and presenting us with a basic danger. And what do? I don't mean you in here, but what happens out there? Business as usual. We have gas companies that are now out there advertising that they're green fuel, green gas. Have you seen them? Well, gas, liquefied natural gas, is 87.7% methane. And methane is 100 times more destructive than CO2 over the short term. Over the longer term, it comes down to about 20 times more destructive. You happy with that? So we have a challenge now. I think it's different. I think this moment is different. I think this meeting has to be different. I think we have to be prepared, go back to our governments and to our communities, build the grassroots support for a movement across this country that gets something done. And I say that with memories. I don't mean to go down memory road at all. But if something works and you've done it in the past, think about it maybe again. In 1970, we created something called Earth Day. Many of you have taken part in them in all these years. Well, we got 21 million Americans to come out of their homes and say, we don't want to live in a community where you can't even see and breathe the air, where you can't see across the city. That's what it was like in New York, Los Angeles. And instead of just having a one-day demonstration, we created a political movement where we made this issue and these issues voting issues. We targeted the 12 worst votes in the United States Congress, and we went after them in their particular districts. We defeated 7 of the 12, and immediately after that, a president, Richard Nixon, who was not an environmentalist, suddenly said, this is a voting issue. Guess what? We passed the Clean Air Act, the Safe Drinking Water Act, the Marine Mammal Protection Act, the Coastal Zone Management Act, the Endangered Species Act, and we succeeded in creating the Environmental Protection Agency of the United States. We didn't even have one. Now it's under assault. So what's happened is we have a group of people in the country who like it the way it is. They don't care about what's happening in the islands. They're making money. And they're happy to have new glitzy advertisements come out that talk about greenness when they're not green at all and lie about it. And as Mark Twain once said, a lie can get halfway around the world before the truth even puts its boots on. Well, guess what, folks? Now you just push a button and it goes all the way around the world. And that's where we have many of us operating in political fact-free zones, where you don't know what the truth is, and you can't have a referee who's going to decide it for you. So, my friends, every heat wave we see, I can remember 30 years ago when we listened to Jim Hansen testify before the United States Congress and tell us global warming is here. 1988. 1992, we went to Rio. 1997, Kyoto. You can go through the list. Here we are. 225. Are we going to be content to still have COPs in 15, 20 years? Now, I believe that in the last COP, and I want to leave you with a sense of possibility here. 30 years ago, there was a decade. It's the third hottest decade in history. 20 years ago, we have a decade. It's the second hottest. And this last decade is the first hottest decade in human history. And this January was judged by scientists to be the hottest January in human history. So, do you have a question about where we're going? So, folks, I think we have to change our attitude. We have to be militant and tough and strong and demand that we're going to get the action, because we can't keep going back to our citizens and telling them, oh, don't worry, it's going to be good, we did this, we did that. In Dubai, and here's the positive note. I am an optimist. I believe we can win this battle. I believe we can still win this battle. We have the technologies now that we are able to deploy in order to do that. Wind, solar, wind is 90% cheaper than it was. Wind is now providing 20 gigawatts from one tower, megawatts, excuse me. And Batteries now are getting better. There's a new battery in China, the sodium-ion battery that's going to be able to provide much more capacity to have better storage that together with wind and solar will give us the chance to have firm energy, which we need. Fusion has made great steps forward. So you can run through a list. I'm not going to go through them all. But really exciting things are happening in the world of tech. And yet we see people even pulling back on tech and pulling back the money and unwilling to come together to organize themselves. So we are the ones who are coming together to organize ourselves. And Tony DeBrum and others knew how to do that. We can take a lesson from our own colleagues and friends who've been part of this mission for a long period of time, my friends. When more than 60% of the coral reefs that host over 25% of marine life are in danger and threatened, 90% in danger by 2030, when that is the case, there's no time to rest. When up to 1/3 of seafood that we eat is illegally imported around the world, there's no time to rest. When less than 3% of the world's oceans are highly protected, and 8% we run around and say are protected, but they aren't really, and when terrible things are happening on the high seas, human trafficking, slavery, people taken out of, I won't name the countries here now, but they go out to sea in literally indentured servitude for a year or two. Thousands of vessels plying the high seas and the oceans and EEZs, ripping up ship and the bottom, and it keeps going on. So I think the world needs to begin to see the anger that we feel, the frustration that we feel, but most importantly, the vision that we have that can take us where we need to go. There are countless ways. If we just were to deploy renewables at a faster rate, we could meet our 2030 goal of a 43 to 50% reduction in emissions. We could do that, except that certain countries are bringing more coal-fired plants online. Certain countries are still building new gas where you can't yet capture the gas, and the people at Harvard and Stanford and various places tell me they don't think you can do that, bringing it to scale at a cost that will be affordable. So I think it's time for truth. I think it's time for reality. We have the right ambition, the right policies, the right partnerships, and we can shape the course of the future. Dubai said this: almost 200 nations, including oil and gas, with 52 gas companies taking part. They signed on and said, we must transition away from fossil fuel so as to achieve net zero 2050, according to the science, accelerating in this decade. Accelerating. The single biggest accelerator of this decade is China. China has built and deployed more renewable energy than all of the rest of the world put together. And Germany has moved to plug its hole, getting off of nuclear, and has massive amount of renewables deployed. Why isn't the rest of the world? And I asked the question, why aren't we in my country? Texas, by the way, with a Republican governor and 2 Republican senators, is the largest wind deployment area in the United States. So we can do this. We really can do this. It's a matter of determining and fighting back against greed, selfishness, comfort with the status quo, and getting more people on this planet, not just to talk about caring about people in difficult places, but actually doing something for them. And I hope this conference will break with the past a little bit and make clear our sense of outrage at the status quo and our determination to try to move forward and win this battle. Thank you all.
So much. Thank you so much, Secretary Kerry, for your inspiring and very passionate closing words. Can we do this? Let's do it. Let's take a moment before we wrap up our opening session to thank all the speakers who have joined us this morning to share their vision and their commitment to greater resilience. And please join me in doing so. Because you've all set the tone for what promises to be a very inspiring and very impactful day indeed. Very quick words about the rest of today's program. Remember to just scan the QR code to find out more. And let me remind you that in the next 15 minutes, the first of our series of 6 thematic sessions will explore in more detail the different aspects of coastal adaptation. And please note that the thematic sessions will take place in 3 different locations, spaces, a main hall with 750 seats for the science and finance sessions, 2 additional rooms with 170 seats, one for sessions on risk assessment tools and governance, and the other for sessions on port cities and nature-based solutions. You'll hear from city mayors, space agencies, climate financiers, and SIDS representatives, all working on the front line of adaptation. Our volunteer team, easily identifiable by their blue t-shirts, will be on hand throughout the venue to guide you to your breakout rooms and help you with translation or logistics to ensure you make the most of today. We'll now break for informal networking before the next session begins. Many thanks to all of you. Enjoy your sessions. I hope they are fruitful. See you again this afternoon. Thank you. And can I please call Mr. Carey and Mr. Estrosi to the stage for a final picture? Can I please ask all our speakers today to come and join us here on stage for a final group picture? Excuse me, Mayor Funchal, could you please take to the stage for a final group picture, please? Please.